Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Pereira. In a large-scale reform of tribunals, the government on Tuesday sought to reduce the number of these quasi-judicial bodies and bring parity in the service conditions of their officials. Among the better-known tribunals, the Competition Appellate Tribunal will now be merged with the National Company Law Appellate Tribunal. The Cyber Appellate Tribunal and the Airports Economic Regulatory Authority Appellate Tribunal will be merged with the Telecom Dispute Settlement and Appellate Tribunal. The Industrial Tribunal is to also perform the functions of the Employees Provident Funds Appellate Tribunal, and the Copyright Board will be merged with the Intellectual Property Appellate Board. The amendments under the Finance Bill will change several laws and allow the government to set the criteria for appointment and removal of chairperson, vice chairperson and other members of the tribunals and decide on their terms of service. On this edition of The Big Picture, we'll analyze the government's decision to reorganize tribunals under the Finance Bill of 2017. Joining me on the program today are Mohammad Salim, Lok Sabha MP, CPIM, Rajiv Gowda, National Spokesperson of the Congress and Rajya Sabha MP, Gopal Krishna Agarwal, National Spokesperson of the BJP, and Priya Ranjan Dash, Senior Journalist. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Mr. Salim, I'd like to begin with you. Bringing in these changes under the Finance Bill, what's your take on it?
If you want to rationalize and standardize, as the Finance Minister has made on the floor of the House, there's no objection. But the question is, Finance Bill has its own specific requirements. So smuggling in, I put this word, quote unquote, into the Finance Bill, this is a train. Over the years we found that there are so many things which is not connected with budget, not connected with tax proposals, not required to be put in the Finance Bill, but either for its own reason, the government tends to put all those things into the Finance Bill. So on the one hand, the importance of the Finance Bill gets reduced, the focus also gets lost, because there's a host of issues which has to be addressed in the Finance Bill, and when Parliament is taking discussion, and it's a limitation of the parliamentary scrutiny. Because if you bring in any bills separately, first standing committee or even in consideration stage, so many points can be taken up. So if Finance Minister says that no, it's just salary and conditions and appointments, agreed. But then when a bill comes, so a host of other things, say for example competition, anti-competition thing or any other tribunals. So when a bill comes, it's not that only those clauses of those bills, but other issues related to that are sought to be discussed, and Minister has to reply to that. So that is the limitation, how is squeezing the scope of Parliament scrutiny. That is one objection. So out of 40 amendments sought in this Finance Bill, 10 is of course accepted because those required to for income tax, customs, excise, all of this. But 30 others could have been brought in separate. Maybe there could have been one bill, but we could have discussed it. So it's a limitation, limiting the scope of parliamentary scrutiny and discussion. That's the objection.
Is that going to be the way forward, Mr. Agarwal? Because you know that you don't have the numbers in the Rajya Sabha for the time being, at least for the next 1 year or so. The numbers are not going to favor you in the Rajya Sabha. So any of these contentious bills that you want to pass them as a money bill so that there is no opposition from the Rajya Sabha.
No, it's not the purpose, because I don't think there are any contentious issue in this thing. Basically, they are, as has been said by the FM, these are administrative things which are to be incorporated, and because ultimately governance is our objective, cleaning of, there are several laws which have been repealed, those things, administrative decisions, streamlining the administration, then governance, etc. These are the issues they have been taken into, and these are not very serious or anything where, and even if their discussions have to take place, Lok Sabha is a platform where discussions can take place, but only you cannot call ki all these issues with a purpose can be done like this or will be done in this way. We don't agree. There are some issues which we consider to be administratively expedient, which have to be done fast so that we have a better governance, fast delivery, smooth lining administration, the ease of operation of the government. These are the issues. I think particularly this merging of the tribunals is for that purpose, and better administration is the issue.
Mr. Dash, was there a need really to reorganize these tribunals at this point in time, and was this the best route to take?
Well, in terms of there being a need, I think it's agreed that there is always a need to review the functioning of the tribunals and see if you could have better functioning by merging or changing the arrangements. So there is no dispute in that. In fact, when such changes are made, those changes needs to be, when these go through parliamentary scrutiny, then they will be scrutinized, their performance will be reviewed, and you would arrive at a perhaps an arrangement. If a merger is, for instance, if you look at some of the mergers which have been effected through this, now some of them do not actually make sense on the face of it. That there could be little sense of, look at the Competition Commission of India, the tribunal. Now to merge that with the company law. Now Competition Commission is a competition law is an emerging area, and it's for the future that it's going to be very important. And perhaps it can be argued that a separate identity for a competition law tribunal would be in future will be felt, and perhaps it should have been kept separate from company law, which is again important aspect. But if the government feels that they could be merged, it's better that their performance is reviewed, scrutinized, and then this kind of an arrangement is arrived at. So this is what, there is no harm in rearranging the tribunal systems that you have, but it must be done after a careful review, and so that the arrangement that you post review that you actually give effect to becomes more better streamlined and delivers.
Sure, fair enough. Yes, Mr. Salim, you wanted to make a point.
I totally agree with Mr. Dash. That's what I was telling about. One is that if government, it's a prerogative of the government. If government of the day thinks that because they, for smooth functioning or expedite the things or increase the efficiency or reduce the cost, they want to rearrange, or they can, but they have to come out with a proposal. First, it should be studied properly, evaluate properly, and come out with the result. Let the people of the country know. There should be transparency. This government has come with a sense of talking transparency and accountability. So the government is accountable to the parliament. So if it has been brought as a separate bill, and then discussion took place based on the government's paper that this is the review and this is what we necessitated. So then the parliament with its wisdom could have passed it. But what is exactly is done is, so many now last cases also, past performance can show you, just to avoid Rajya Sabha, because we have this bicameral arrangement. So Rajya Sabha, you have this embarrassment on so many cases. So you can't pass whatever, you can't go to fulfill your wish. So naturally, to put everything as a money bill, that's why I said smuggling into.
Sure.
So this is very unfortunate, one part. Second part is, as rightly pointed out, the Competition Commission, when this liberation took place, so this earlier that MRTPC Act was there, this monopoly restrictive trade practices. Then they said no, monopoly is no more there, it's a competition, open market, so competition, but fair principles should be there. So there's a big competition tribunal. Now you think company tribunal can, Company Act is different, company law is different, and companies are subjected to scrutiny by the Company Law Board, and then you have a tribunal. But this, on the question of competition, you have merged it, but you have not come up with an explanation. Yes, put it in the finance bill.
Or what sense does it make to merge
with telecom all together?
I'm going to let all of you speak and have your word on the debate, but let me go across to Professor Rajiv Gowda, who's joined us on the debate as well, and who hasn't had a word yet on the program. Professor Gowda, I mean, this is something that the opposition needs to deal with. This is something that the opposition has to bear with for the for the next few months or so, till the BJP gets a majority in the Rajya Sabha. They're going to push some of these bills as money bills, because that's a tactic that the government is using. So that's fair play, is what the BJP is saying.
I would strongly disagree. This is undermining institutions. It's undermining the constitutional authority of Parliament to scrutinize and improve and pass the kind of legislation that will strengthen the regulatory system, including in the context of tribunals. The discussion that we are having on this TV channel should be something that we have in Parliament, in standing committees. That's when we are in standing committees, we work with the interests of the nation at heart. We are not even partisan there. Okay, so in Parliament we may be a little more, wearing our party hats, again in the interest of the nation itself. But the basic point is that there's a lot of value that we bring to improving legislation. Now, when these things are sneaked in this particular manner, this is, they did this with the Aadhaar bill. Why are you afraid of the Rajya Sabha? If you look at the number of bills that we passed, every one of them have passed because we have cooperated. We have passed multiple constitutional amendments. So it is not as if we are not constructive people there. Just because you don't have a majority on many of these issues, unless there's some underhand agenda which we're not aware of, we would tell you, look, for this, just what Mr. Salim and others have just pointed out, there is, competition requires a particular kind of regulatory framework, something else requires some other framework. In the discussion, we've had a debate on electoral reforms yesterday in Parliament, in Rajya Sabha, because where many of these issues regarding electoral bonds were also raised. But we couldn't deal with this earlier because there was no consultation and there was no opportunity for even that to be examined. It has been sneaked in here. It amends the RBI Act. Many things that are worth discussing. If you want to bring these in, we are focused on constructive cooperation. That is our job. Policy making, scrutiny, everything. Please don't think that, just because you don't have a majority, you're not going to get anything through. That's not the track record so far. Please pay attention to institutions of Parliament, which have been set up by the Constitution. They have a job to do, and that job is to improve public policy. Do not bypass us. Do not do this underhand money bill business. It's becoming a very, very bad practice. Sends the extraordinarily wrong signals, and you start wondering whether this government really is going to stick to its rhetoric, or it's going to say one thing and do something entirely different. I'm very disappointed with Mr. Jaitley and the finance bill and all the changes that he has tried to sneak in there, with which is aimed at ensuring that we do not get a job, get to do our constitutionally mandated job to scrutinize and pass and improve legislation in the interest of the country.
Fair enough. You made your points there. Some of the words used, Mr. Agarwal, sneak in, smuggle in, scared of the Rajya Sabha. Is that what it is?
No, actually you should see these, if you go to the why the tribunals reorganization took place, it's from the recommendation of the Standing Committee of the Parliament, which has suggested its recommendation. So therefore there is a very clear need which is coming out. There was a need, there is an administrative decision, and if Mr. Gowda is so emphatic on Rajya Sabha's functioning, he should answer why there was a disruption. Ultimately, who has led the Rajya Sabha, why they were disrupted, why there was no debate, why they were not properly allowed to function. That's what they have to answer before they talk of disruption or discussions. We are all for discussion. Even Lok Sabha is a valid platform for discussions, and these are the issues which are administrative ones, which are which have been passed by the Standing Committee, and other things are relating to finance bill. So I think the functioning of Rajya Sabha is a responsibility of opposition also. They should also see that they should allow Parliament to function and legislate. The main function is to legislate, and
you made the point. Let them respond now. Mr. Salim, you're disrupting the Rajya Sabha all the time. That is, the opposition is disrupting the Rajya Sabha all the time. So we have no other option. This is the only way that we get our administrative agenda through.
I must compliment Mr. Agarwal that 50% ground he has already conceded. That means what ought to have done as a correct legislative procedure, observing correct legislative procedure, and as a separate bill with a parliamentary scrutiny or standing committee. But they have not done it because, quote unquote, disruption of Rajya Sabha, trouble in Rajya Sabha. So that's why this route was sought. So this is sneaked into or smuggled into is a valid point for him. And this now coming to, actually this session when this bill is passed, what is the disruption in Rajya Sabha? if disruption is there, and there have been disruptions since the inception. When BJP was opposition, the Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha was also disrupted. But that doesn't mean that you just jettison the parliamentary proceedings. This parliament is, according to the Prime Minister, when he first came in as elected, he just bowed his head and is a temple of democracy. So in a temple of democracy, one day there is some hangama, so you stop that functioning of that parliament and you avoid that.
But
that should not be
Let him complete. I'll come to you. Let him complete.
And secondly, this is why in Constitution we have this bicameral arrangement. One is a permanent body, another is a changing body. So with a whips, you cannot change it. So it should have been doubly scrutinized. Otherwise, there is no point in having two houses. One is Union of States, the Council of States, and another is the Lok Sabha, is a popularly elected chamber. So now, from the states angle also, these bills has to be scrutinized.
Sure.
And
sure.
I'm again telling it that the never parliament was short of discussing and debating and passing. GST bill, Constitutional Amendment bill was passed. Even though there was initially some hangama, but the government reached out. So whenever there is some dispute, the government should reach out to the opposition, have a fair discussion level. But actually, the executive should be held accountable to the parliament. That's the cardinal principle of parliamentary democracy. This is what they are fearing, even though they have a majority, even if in future course they get a majority in Rajya Sabha, but this practice will continue.
Sure.
This government may not continue. Even if this government continues, that means that just to have convenience.
You're saying the precedent is set and this is something that will follow in the years to come.
Institutions are built over decades.
A brief comment on this. If they say that the Lok Sabha is not a valid platform to discuss and debate and pass on the bill, if that logic is there because BJP has a majority in Lok Sabha, then similar logic can go to the Rajya Sabha. That's not the correct logic. The logic is these were the administrative decisions were passed by the or recommended by the standing committee. Already they have been scrutinized, and that further scrutiny can take place in Lok Sabha. So ultimately, if there is a major issue which opposition thinks that they are put, then they should be much concerned. But on these issues, reorganization of tribunal is not that issue that we will sneak in something and other thing. That's an administrative.
Sure, fair enough, fair enough. Professor Gowda, I can see you shaking your head. I'm going to come to you in just a minute for your comment, but before that, Mr. Dash wants to make a point.
I just wanted to make a brief point. Insofar as this tribunal business are concerned, I do not think, to be fair to the government, I do not think that they were trying to bypass Rajya Sabha. Insofar as these tribunals are concerned, I'm not saying that the opposition's apprehension about the government trying to convert bills into money bill and avoiding the Rajya Sabha is incorrect. The opposition could be right there. But in the case of these tribunals, had they come as separate bills also, many of them would have qualified as money bill. Because salaries etc. are involved, things when you draw from the Consolidated Fund of India, then it will turn out to be a money bill, and then but a money bill Rajya Sabha cannot hold it, but it doesn't prevent Rajya Sabha from discussing it.
Sure.
Now in this case, what has happened in the case of tribunals particularly is that both houses have been deprived of discussion.
Could not discuss.
Discussion meaning a proper scrutiny and giving ideas, in fact, to the government, because some of the net outcome of these mergers which have happened is quite atrocious if you look at it. As I was pointing out that you club airport tribunal with telecom tribunal, it doesn't make sense. Perhaps airport tribunal with road tribunal could make some sense.
Sure.
But if you are putting it with telecom tribunal, you also have to see which are the areas, emerging areas where the workload is in the way the economy is taking shape in future, where the workload is going to increase. So those kind of detailed scrutiny can be better done if it is discussed in both houses. Of course, many of these tribunals bills separately also would have qualified to be money bill. So I don't think government could have, they would have been legitimately money bill, and then Rajya Sabha wouldn't have been able to block it, but they would have discussed it.
Sure. I'll come to you, Mr. Salim. Before that, let me go to Professor Gowda as well. Professor Gowda, yes, make your point.
See, the concept of money bill is actually a little more concrete. If a bill deals with only expenditure on the Consolidated Fund of India, then it's really a money bill. Otherwise, numerous bills have financial implications. They will cost so much, you're going to set up some offices, allocate so many resources. Those are regular bills. They don't have to be classified as money bills. And really, something like a budget is a money bill, because it deals entirely with taxing and spending. And others will have some, so this is something that you've seen, debated on the floor of the House. You've seen the Secretary General of the Lok Sabha also making some clarifications on this front, along with the Speaker. So so let's not get into the specifics of what we're talking about. Let's talk about the principle of it all. If you choose to bypass, Parliament by bringing in amendments into the finance bill at a very late stage and at a time when not much scrutiny can happen, then you're subverting an institution, you're preventing yourself from getting inputs and suggestions which are concrete and which will strengthen legislation, etc. And then ultimately you are basically giving our House a sense that that we don't really have a role here, which is just totally inappropriate. If you think about my friend Gopal Krishna Agarwal's point about disruptions, as someone pointed out, the original book on parliamentary disruption is co-authored by Arun Jaitley, Sushma Swaraj and Venkaiah Naidu. They are the authors of it. We are just students who are learning from their wonderful innovations on that
Let's
front.
not get into
but
that.
The point I want to make
Professor
is
Gowda,
that
let's not get into
disruptions have
that.
not taken place. Disruptions have not taken place. Disruptions have not taken place because we are upset with some clause in the GST. Disruptions have taken place because there is some lynching of someone on the suspicion of eating beef, some doctor tape has been released and someone is arrested for being anti-national. These are disruptions that have been taking place for other issues which are, when the nation is in ferment, which the government refuses to acknowledge or address. So disruptions take place for a variety of reasons.
Sure.
And Parliament has functioned. The amount of bills that we have passed in the last 2.5 years of my being there, which is about the same amount of time as the Modi Sarkar has been there, is phenomenal, including bills like the land boundary agreement, which the same people who pushed it this time opposed very vehemently when they were in the opposition.
Fair enough. Okay.
That's what I was telling.
So,
I
No, let him complete and come to it.
anything, the basic thrust is do not take these measures. Please bring up these issues, including electoral reform, including some of the other things that have been put into this finance bill. Bring them in as separate legislations. It doesn't take very long. We are in a position to give you tremendous input and help improve those bills with our collective wisdom. That's what we are here for. Okay, and don't subvert the institutions that our founders have established in the Constitution.
That time of the program when I take final comments, yes, respond to what he is saying and also your final concluding remarks.
My comment on disruption was in response to when he said that we are trying to sneak some things through these money bills. When he himself is acknowledging that several bills they have supported and have been passed from the Rajya Sabha. Who brought them to Rajya Sabha? It was our government which brought them to Rajya Sabha. Therefore, when you say that these bills have been sneaked in, then I said you should think of your disruption. We have no intention of sneaking important, which are we consider to be administrative bills, which we consider to be bills which have been already recommended through the standing committee. These are the bills which are for governance. Ultimately, we have seen the country pass through the policy paralysis. Everywhere, if multiplicity of regulatory authority, these were very complicated issues where the government was at a standstill. So we have to move out of that, and that's our way. There is no intention of sneaking it. We appreciate it when they say that we will have all bills will go to Rajya Sabha, which are not the which are to be debated, which have to be discussed. We accept their support and appreciation.
Sure, fair enough. Mr. Salim, the government is saying that as long as you support it, as long as you want to have a holistic debate and nothing more than it, we are ready for it. But the problem is you're not letting the holistic debate to take place.
This is in short called restricted democracy. If you are with us, you are granted democratic rights. If you are not, then you are not. Well, starting from Trump to even to these days here itself, this is being exercised. But this is ultimately against this free thinking, against the spirit of freedom, and against the democratic principles. And parliamentary democracy functions on the basis of this trust and belief and faith on these cardinal principles, which is enshrined in our constitution. So it's not a presidential form of government that some bureaucrats think and then you just get this stamp. And that's why even Lok Sabha could not get the opportunity to scrutinize it. Because it was, that's why I said sneaked into or snugged into 40 things in one bill, and then you get this 8 hours of time. So financial issues, tax propositions, economic health, those things will be debated, or this tribunal's function will be debated. Had it been a separate bill, then this should have been properly addressed, and the issues the people should know.
What's the way forward then, Mr. Salim?
The government should take a lesson that they're comfortable. It's not that they're in a hurry. They're not going to be paralyzed also. So let them function in a normal way, having principle, observance of these principles of the constitutions, and some respect for the parliamentary democracy. And equality of these two houses is not there in the constitution. But whatever right these individual houses are having, this due recognition has to be given. No shortcut.
Fair enough, fair enough. Mr. Dash, you know, is the apprehension of the opposition at this point in time justified?
Yeah, I think there is bound to be serious concern about the way 40 amendments were dovetailed into the finance bill, and amendments seeking changes into other laws. For instance, company law, you know, in the case of political, corporate donation to political parties. Now, you know, the existing provision is 7.5% of your net profit average of 3 years. That ceiling goes. But more seriously, where the companies, as per the existing provision, are supposed to report to the shareholders not only the amount of donation that they were making to political parties, but to which political party they have. That has been overridden. Now, that kind of a change, when you bring about in company law, in case of corporate democracy, shareholders' rights, and do that through an amendment to the finance bill, that there is bound to be concern about the parliamentary procedures, the way laws are being made in this country.
I'm out of time on the program. One final comment from Professor Gowda. Professor Gowda, your concluding remarks on the program.
Well, as I will echo what my colleague Mr. Salim said, that the government does not need to resort to these kinds of measures, that it would be beneficial if all these measures are brought before Parliament with substantial time for discussion and scrutiny, and we expect that what should be in a finance bill is really restricted to taxing and spending proposals, and everything else does not really find a place within that. It is a shortcut that has been used too often, and it is minimally disrespectful of the role of the Rajya Sabha and the larger constitutional establishment that we've worked so hard to preserve over these decades.
All right. On that note, I'll have to call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Mohammad Salim, Rajiv Gowda, Gopal Krishna Agarwal and Priya Ranjan Dash. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. That's all the time we have. See you again next time.